Good morning and welcome back to 2020. Today we have for you French engineers building a bridge over this estuary in the Ypres Valley when, to their shock and horror, there's an advancing unit of Prussians coming. So the engineers have taken up a defensive position in Kulm farm and are fortifying that as only engineers can. On their right flank, the commander has put the National Guard of Paris. Unfortunately, they're really only militia. And in front, he's put his battalion of gendarmes that he had with him, the heavy gun behind a stone wall. And this is interesting. Here is a battalion of dragoons who don't have horses. And so they'll be fighting as infantry. Here is the regiment of dragoons. And being dragoons, they're not very good at scouting because they're heavy cavalry, which is probably why the Prussians have got as close as they have without being seen. And on the left flank here in this field is a Corsican battalion. Now let's have a look at these advancing Prussians. Hussars out on the flank. The regiments of cavalry in the Prussian army aren't as huge as the French. And on the commander in the middle, light infantry, guard infantry, regiment thereof, 2 regiments of infantry, and an attached battalion of Nassau's. When I said 2 regiments, I meant 2 battalions making a regiment of infantry. And on the left flank, Prussian lancers, with their supply train following up in the rear. So that's the Prussian force advancing. It's a very well fortified position, the French behind stone walls and in the farmhouse. It's going to be a tough one. The commander wished, and they're opening the fire with their howitzer. The French reply with their heavy cannon. And so it begins. End of move 1, and the Prussians are advancing. The howitzer continues to fire. End of move 2, the Prussians are still advancing. The French heavy gun is taking toll out of the infantry as they come forward. The howitzer is concentrating on the dragoons, and they can't take it. The commanders, instead of letting them sit there and just get annihilated, has ordered them to attack. End of move number 3, and the French dragoons are forming up in line, and they're obviously going to try and take out that annoying howitzer. The Prussian commander has likewise ordered his hussars to attack down this flank next to the river. As there seems to be very little really to stop them, they're going to try and harass the French right flank. Interesting. Okay, so the guns are still firing. And taking out casualties. End of move number 4, and the dragoons are in full attack. They'll hit that howitzer next move. Howitzers can't fire under 12 inches, and so the next round will be canister probably. The heavy French gun is continuing to take casualties out of these Prussian line, and the musket fire from the gendarmes has hit the Prussian hussars as they charge forward. So it's all up for grabs at the moment. So this is the end of the movement phase of move 5. Just want to show you what's happening before I do the calculations. The dragoons have charged the cannon, which fired canister at them, but it was actually fairly ineffective. They've ridden over the cannon, destroying it, and continued on and hit the Prussian lancers, who went into a charge towards them at the last moment. You'll notice that the attached battalion of Nassau's has formed a square. Now over on the Prussian left flank, their hussars have charged the infantry that were firing at them and went straight over the top of them or through them, and they've continued on and they've hit the municipal guard of Paris. Now these people are militia. On the way in, the engineers from the farmhouse fired a volley at them. The troops here fired a fairly ineffectual volley, and it took out some casualties, but there was enough left of the hussars for them to actually hit the Paris guard here. So that's the end of the move. Now I'll go and do the calculations and we'll see what's happening. This is now the end of the move in total, number 5, and the results of the cavalry attack. The dragoons raced across the cannon and killed the crew who were in open order and moved straight on to be in turn attacked by the Prussian lancers. The end result was that the dragoons won the melee and sent the lancers retreating. However, their morale, through casualties, had got down to a point where it broke, and the cavalry are in turn retreating after having won the melee. The Prussian lancers, although having been beaten in the melee, their morale is below par as well. They will retreat, but they in turn will at least be able to protect the baggage train because they only lost the melee. And their morale has broken as well, so they can't come more forward than that. So this cavalry attack here turned out for both sides to be no clear winner. However, on the Prussian left flank, their hussars, who remember were charging into militia troops, have quite successfully destroyed the whole battalion of the National Guard of Paris, and in turn now have an open path around to the French baggage train or ammunition train, as there is no infantry that can come out and stop them in time before they destroy that train. It really is all over. It is a Prussian victory due to the hussars being successful on the left flank. So if those Prussian hussars had not been successful, the Prussians would not have taken this position. They could not move across this field against a heavy gun and troops behind a wall, even with the numbers they've got. And this first battalion has been suffering from the attention of the heavy gun the whole time. There's gaps in there. Even if they managed to outshoot these troops behind the wall, the engineers had fortified that farmhouse, and don't forget the Corsican battalion in the field here. So the French actually were in a much better tactical position, or defensive position is the better term, but the weak link was not protecting that baggage train, although they probably thought they pretty much had that guarded with the militia over there. Who would expect a daring move like these hussars to simply charge straight down? Likewise, over here, if the morale of these dragoons hadn't broken, they in turn could have chased the lancers back up the field and taken the Prussian train. And that would have been an interesting situation where both sides basically just need to pull back and retreat. So the French, even though they're in a wonderful defensive position, can't sustain themselves here without their supply train. They will be leaving. It's a Prussian victory, and we'll do a post-mortem in just a little while once the troops have left. I'm now going to do a quick post-mortem of the game that you've seen today. Firstly, let me say that each side was constructed to 1,100 points, and the game lasted 5 moves, which is fairly quick for a game. Small games can often do that. So what did the Prussians do right? Well, remember that they started the game with their howitzer here, and it was firing at the high-value target it could see, which were the French dragoons. Now, the French dragoons could have sat there and been slowly destroyed, or retreat or attack. And the commander decided to send them in, which was really the correct move, because although they took casualties from the howitzer all the way up, they did actually make it to the howitzer and went straight over the top of it, killing all the crew who were in open order. And then, unfortunately for them, they were struck by the Prussian lancers. Now, even then, they won the melee. If they hadn't had so many casualties, they could have continued on and taken the ammunition train of the Prussians, and it would have been a French victory. But their casualties were such that the men just started drifting back towards their own lines. Morale had cracked. The Lancers, having even lost the melee, their morale also had cracked, but they could have retreated back and stood in front of the ammunition train, but they couldn't go forward from there. Alrighty. At the same time, though, the Prussians sent their hussars, light troops, light cavalry, in a flanking attack down the side here. Now, they took casualties from the gendarmes who fired their muskets at them, but they went over the troops that were in front of them and continued on to hit the militia troops who also fired at them, as well as some of the engineers in Kulm farm. So they still had enough troops there. They weren't, their morale hadn't reached anywhere to worry about at that point. It was getting close, mind you, but they hit the militia and completely destroyed the whole battalion. Militia aren't, as you probably know, extremely good troops. They then continued on around and destroyed, or would have destroyed, the ammunition train of the French. At that point, the French could not have even got their engineers out of the house, over the fences, across over the fences to stop them in time. So the Prussian infantry, who were suffering as they approached the field here from the French heavy gun, there was no way that those two battalions, even with the Guard regiment, or battalion, the Guard battalion making up the regiment, were going to go across that open field, outshoot those men behind the wall, take the gun, continue on and take the farmhouse, which was fortified by engineers, and they're good troops. It just wasn't going to happen. The only element of manoeuvre for both sides were their cavalry, and they both tried exactly the same thing on opposite sides of the field. Today, the Prussians succeeded. And basically, that's how the game was played out. Now, I hope you've enjoyed watching this short game. If you have, subscribe, and I'll keep on bringing you more. Alrighty, I've enjoyed it. Hope you have too. Thanks very much, and goodbye for now.